And now, Podtendo presents SideQuest Cinema.
Let us together rebuild this world, that we may share in the days of peace.
The Return of the King is the most critically acclaimed motion picture of our time. Never has a filmmaker aimed higher or achieved more. On over 150 critics' top 10 lists, nominated for 4 Golden Globe Awards, including Best Director Peter Jackson and Best Picture of the Year. The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, rated PG-13. Now playing.
Hey guys, welcome back to Podtendo's SideQuest Cinema, where we're a retro video game, very niche podcast, and we talk about movies sometimes, because why the heck not? I'm your co-host Mick, and I'm joined every episode by my lovely and talented co-host
Tyson. Cool
man. And this is it, the end of the trilogy. It was a bit of a journey to get here. My legs are tired from all the walking, but we did it, and the king has returned.
Yes, it's this one's a landmark one. This one's the Oscar winner.
It's a big deal. Yep.
It is a big deal. It's the end of it. And I mean, I think this one has, like, a lot of people kind of, it maybe not reaches the same highs of the Two Towers, but I've always held this one in high regard. I think Fellowship's my favorite, but Two Towers is quickly wanting to knock it off that spot, and this is comfortably just chilling in third.
Nice.
But it's not a bad third. It's like a 9.8 or whatever the heck you want to give it a scale.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, this is a monumental. It's a great end of the movie. It is one of the better third acts to a film trilogy, right? But it does have that kind of that. It goes on a little too long. They didn't get to enough of the stuff in the Two Towers book, so that like a lot crammed into this movie where it doesn't need to be, right? And I think they made sacrifices to make the Two Towers a better film, and you pay the dividends at the beginning of Return of the King.
Yeah, but I mean, this one's got some of my favorite parts.
Interesting. All right, cool.
So
sweet.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, we'll get that into most notable scene. Look at that. So Return of the King was released December 17th, 2003. Where were you then? Runtime is 201 minutes. It's a lot. Budget was $94. Box office was $1.146 billion. Peter Jackson directed this bad boy. Produced by Barry M. Osborne, Fran Walsh, and Peter Jackson. The cast included Elijah Woods, Ian McKellen, Liv Tyler, Viggo Mortensen. Why is Liv Tyler so highly ranked? I don't understand. Sean Astin, Kate Blanchett, John Rhys-Davies, Bernard Hill, Christopher Lee, Billy Boyd, Dominic Monaghan, Orlando Bloom, Hugo Weaving, Brad Dourif, Carl Urban. Brad Dourif's not in this one. Andy Serkis, Ian Holm, and Sean Bean, ? So there must be some type of weird flashback where, like, Faramir tells someone something, and because I don't know, he kept just showing up, and I was like, I don't think Sean Bean's in this, but it must be an extended edition. He shows up for something.
Yeah. Well, he's got to have like a scene. I think there may be like a scene with him and his brother.
Yeah,
because the brother is like pretty. He seems like he should be more important to the story, but he's kind of just like and unceremoniously just sent off.
Faramir, unfortunately, has this weird thing because he doesn't have like the pure blood of the king that Aragorn has. He's kind of like cast down upon, and he's looked like he's less very much like but Dathomir. No, what's his name? Dathomir? What's the king's name in this? Or like the steward? Denethor. Denethor.
Yeah.
So Denethor is looked as less good because he doesn't have this like special blood that makes him like live longer and more kind of noble to rule, right? Like the Aragorn. But also, do you ever get the feeling that maybe Tolkien was like a little bit Nazi-ish? Because like, who's the greatest race in Middle Earth? It's the elves. They're all a bunch of blonde-haired, blue-eyed people, you know, that like are better than everyone else. They're more agile. They're smarter. They're wiser.
Yes, a little bit.
The
but
brown
at the same
people,
time,
the brown people that show up. are the
yeah,
bad
well,
guys.
there's like, yeah, it's like the people from the east or the people from the west. It's like they're savages. They work with the bad guys. It's like, but I think that kind of the one of the main themes is this is like the coming of man. This is your era. Like that's why the elves are leaving in mass exodus. It's like this is your guys' time. This is your era. You got to run this thing. But it's like, yes, they are very angelic, whereas like they can almost do no wrong. Where it's in my mind, it's like, man, the elves are such dicks in this. Instead of helping, they're like, no, we're running away to the Westland or to sail to the new world or old world, where the hell they're going. It's like they're all very like
Ariania, where only blonde-haired, blue-eyed people get to live.
Oh, and people we deem fit.
And everyone else has to go to this very hot volcano that has a lot of gas coming out of it, and they'll suffer for what they've done. Like, ooh, this is a bad look. All right, there you go. What other podcast out there is going to talk about Lord of the Rings and get into Nazism right off the start? We do.
Yeah, well, we kind of call it as we sees it, and writing a bunch of blonde-haired, blue-eyed people to be the good guys.
Tolkien, this is perfect. No one will ever think that they're the bad guys. Well, 5 years later.
No doubt. Oh my goodness.
Son of a bitch. All right. Okay, so on to the development details of this fun title before we get more into it. Jackson found Return of the King the easiest film to make because it contains the climax of the story. Filming took place under multiple units across New Zealand between October 11th, 1999 and December 22nd, 2000, with pickup shoots for 6 weeks in 2003 before the film's release. The city of Minas Tirith was built in part of the set of Helm's Deep with wide shots from miniatures. Cool. The enormous soundstage was built in Dry Creek Quarry outside Wellington from the Helm's Deep set. There was also a citadel, the exterior of which is in the Stone Street studio backlot. Using forced perspectives, it contains the withered white tree, built from polyethylene, including an ancient and gnarled Lebanese olive tree. Okay. Influenced by ancient and gnarled Lebanese olive trees. Okay. The third film introduced the enormous spider Shelob. Shelob was designed in 1999 with the body based on a tunnel web spider and the head with numerous growths selected by Peter Jackson's children from one of many sculpts. Jackson himself took great joy in planning the sequence, being an arachnophobe himself. Shelob's lair was inspired by the sandstone and sculpted from existing caverns from the Isengard set. That's neat that they reused a lot of the sets. I like that. The Minas Tirith and lots of the sets were just kind of reused from Helm's Deep, and then obviously they kind of doubled these. So good job.
Yeah, and I mean you wouldn't guess that it's like that cave is that part of that other cave or this part of the Minas Tirith. It's clearly part of Helm's Deep. It's like no, it's shot very well. Where the set designers absolutely nailed it. Like to repurpose things, it's like that's not only a money saver, but it's also like just a time saver. And a big shoot like this, it's you gotta save those corners where you can.
I mean, and just like reusability and stuff, like that's really cool to see. The Battle of the Black Gates was filmed in April at the Rangipiko Desert, a former minefield. New Zealand soldiers were hired as extras while guides were on the lookout for unexploded mines. So that would have made this movie definitely different when they're like, "For Frodo!" And the little kids like take off running and one of them just blows up. And you're like, what's that? It's like, they used Hobbit magic to make smoke. 2003 pickups were filmed in the Wellington studio car park with many parts of the set and blue screens used to finish off the scenes, which the design team had to work 24 hours to get sets ready for that particular day. The shoots continued for 2 months and became an emotional time of farewells of the cast and crew. The film has the most extensive list of reshoots given for the trilogy. The final scene shot were Aragorn escaping the Skull Avalanche and Frodo finishing his book. The cast also received various props associated with their characters, though John Rhys Davies burned his final Gimli prosthetics. Viggo Mortensen headbutted the stunt team goodbye. The pickups ended on June 27th, 2003.
Yeah, I bet you. Well, and I know the main cast got like that tattoo, and they all kind of like bonded over it, and it's pretty cool. Like, I mean, for these characters or these actors to all sign up for this big old thing, and it must be like really like kind of crazy to just be like, oh, like we're here, we're done, we're all finished. Like those goodbyes must have been a lot of tears those days. So. But you kind of feel that, like you feel like this wasn't like people couldn't wait to be done hanging around with these people. It was like, no, this is a good moment of our lives, and we're always going to remember it fondly. So, and it just it carries over. Like you can feel the kinship built among the cast, and it's like that's just super cool. Yeah, and I love that.
Yeah, no, it is. I think it is very touching, very neat, and it just kind of shows how much love, right, and care went into this. It wasn't just a production to make money, right? It wasn't just the Disney producers, the Marvel Studios now, where they just sit there and they just print money, right? And they're like, okay, what beats we got to hit, right? There's obviously a lot that went in between these characters, and being on sets and away from your other families for years on end, right? You obviously make friends with people, right? Just like any work environment, right? Like you walk by the same person long enough, you're gonna make friends with them. So it's touching and kind of sad. Like it is bittersweet watching the end of this film, right? Because like it's just not the same. Like you can go back and watch it, but you do kind of get those twinges when they're saying goodbyes too. Like, you know, it starts getting a little dusty in the room, and you just got to start being like, yeah, no, it's fine. Oh, Gimli's here now. Oh no, oh Gimli.
Yeah, and I get like, so one of the main things everybody dumped on this movie for was that the like 5 endings, and it just doesn't seem to end. It's like, you know what? I'm kind of okay with that, because that's kind of them saying not only goodbye to each other, but to kind of goodbye to us. It's like we've been through this journey together.
If you don't like it, don't watch it.
Yeah.
You only ever have to watch, if you in a movie theater is the only time ever in your life you have to watch a movie start to finish. At any other point in your life, you never have to commit to watching a full movie ever again. Hell, in a movie theater, you could show up an hour late, leave 20 minutes early. Who cares?
True.
Right? Like, so those complaints. So for myself, I actually created something special for this podcast, for the whole world to have. It's called the Podtendo cut of Lord of the Rings. Fellowship, great experience, start to finish. Two Towers, it's got the highs. The Battle of Helm Deep, you gotta get the build up, you gotta watch it. For this movie, I maybe was running out of time last night when I was watching it. I watched up until the Battle of Pelennor Field is over. Then I basically skipped to the Battle of the Black Gates when they start being like, for Frodo! It pairs up really well with Sam fighting Gollum. And then you get the whole Sam and Frodo scene in Mount Doom. And then you get like the big triumph of Sauron dying, Ring being destroyed, Sam getting Frodo outside, and them saying, this is the end, Sam. And he says, this is where I want to be, whatever is beach, with Sam at the end of the world or something. And it's like heartfelt. And then you stop. I've turned a 200-minute experience. I've cut out like 50 minutes. It's now, we're at like about 2 hours of a movie. It hits all the beats. You get all the points. If you want to watch the extra stuff of them walking through Mordor and being really sleepy, or like the endings, you can. But I think definitively the Podtendo cut only includes the high action points, and it does actually flow pretty well from like the final battle to the next battle to the conclusion pretty well.
Yeah. Well, mine's whenever I see Liv Tyler, I just fast forward.
Oh, yeah, that's the Podtendo Tyson cut. Just cut Liv Tyler.
It's like, you see Liv Tyler, you just keep skipping.
But Arwen is dying. Her fate is now tied to the ring. Why?
Because she's emotional right now. And it's like, well, I'm glad that, you could actually have fixed this sword a long time ago. Like, I appreciate the gift, but I mean, you could have gave me this a few years ago.
He wasn't ready.
You literally did it in the afternoon, apparently?
No, he wasn't ready to be king. He wasn't ready to return. He knew it was hit, but he wasn't ready yet. It wasn't until he realized that the fate of the Middle Earth were revealed on him that's when he finally stepped in. So there you go. Look at that. Cuts, something. I don't know what else we were talking about. Emotional goodbyes. We're going to keep going after this. So that's exciting. So me and Tyson don't say goodbye. We'll have to say goodbye at the end of the podcast, but we'll talk to each other in a couple weeks. Plot summary. Are you ready for Podtendo's terrible plot summary?
I am.
I couldn't do it. There's too many beats. There's too much stuff going on. This never happened before. I think I have to do storytelling to tell you all the points, because I don't think I could do a terrible plot summary of this movie. I mean, I guess I could. So, big battles happen, and then Frodo goes Mount Doom and kills the ring.
Yep.
All right.
It's here. Battle for Gondor. They fight off, whereas the bad guys, the orcs and Sauron's army, are slowly pushing into the realm of man, and they're making their assault that's gonna take over the entire world. They push back against it while Frodo and Sam destroy the ring with a little help from Gollum.
There you go. Cool. That's not bad. Yeah, that's actually pretty good. All right, so I'm going to try. Let's see what storytelling brings us. So the introduction here is Pippin touches a stone, Arwen sees a kid, and Sam oversleeps. So the inciting incident is the orcs attack a town, Aragorn gets a sword, and Frodo banishes Sam. Oh, that's sad. The rising action then is Pippin calls for help. I think that's when he lights the beacons. Gandalf takes command, Aragorn meets a ghost, and Frodo gets killed by a spider. There's a big battle in the climax. The ghosts show up, and psych, Frodo's alive. Sam saves him, and they travel to Mount Doom. The conclusion then is the mountain erupts. Eagles fight the dragons and save them. They have a slow-mo goodbye. Frodo leaves with the elves. Sam now has kids. See? He's not gay after all.
He may be bisexual. You know, they have a very strong bond. That's his boy. That's his homie.
Right.
Like, I mean, yeah, he could be bi.
Right, cool.
I kind of get that vibe from them, because I mean, but Frodo's very much like, you know, Sam, you could go say hi to Rosie. Oh no, I'm okay. I'll just hang out here. And you're like, he could go. He knows he can go over and say hi to Rosie. He doesn't want to go over hi to say Rosie. He wants to drink a beer with you, buddy.
Yeah. It's all right. Films, major overarching themes: the ambiguity of evil and the importance of redemption. Cool.
Yes, and maybe something along the lines of living up to your not responsibility, but owning not owning what's expected of you, but
following through on expectations.
Yeah, something along those lines. Because it's kind of like Aragorn's whole thing is it's like he essentially rejected his heritage, but then slowly is like, no, I need to do this for Middle Earth, for everyone. Mm-hmm. This isn't just a me decision. This isn't I choose. This isn't the life I want for me. This is the life I need to live for everyone. So it's like self-sacrifice or something along those lines. Because Sam and Frodo also kind of like, no, there's no return trip. We're not coming back after this. Mm-hmm. This is a one way. We're getting there, and that's it.
Yeah. I'll talk about that later. At the end of the review, I do have a little point kind of on sacrifices made, and we can kind of chat about it then. But we can talk about it now. That is, I did have that kind of.
We'll get to it in that script.
All right, so we got that review. So we start out by what's our favorite part of the movie. We got to gush a little bit. Tyson, what is your favorite part of Return of the King?
This may be goofy. I love the ghosts. The ghosts are my favorite part. Whenever they show up, I just like hear the Ghostbusters theme song, like bum, 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 as they like storm out of onto the fields. You're like, yeah, I love these ghosts. This is ridiculous, but I love this. This is like very fantasy-esque, but also like opens the door for well, is there other ghosts? Or I understand these people were kind of like cursed, but I didn't realize that the king had that much power. Is the king magical? Just opens all these questions, and I'm like, I love when they dive into the fantasy world because it feels like a very realistic world. Yeah, there's elves and orcs and dwarves and dragons, but for some reason my brain just that's all par for the course. So when the ghosts show up, you're like, oh man, we're really going fantasy. I feel like I'm actually walking through a whole a crazy world with things around every corner that you'll always just gives you that Magic the Gathering vibe. There's so much magic and crazy creatures and amazing things, where it's not just like, oh well, you know, there's it's just not like plain fantasy. It's like there's like, this is really high fantasy.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right. For myself, I didn't write anything down when I sent these notes out this morning. Maybe I was supposed to fill in that section, so I just have to come up with something off the top of my head. I'm going to say my favorite part of this movie. We all know the beats. We all know it's good. We all know there's like interesting parts. I think my favorite part is imagining Pippin having to tell people about the adventure he went on. It is the most ludicrous thing. Like, there was guys with swords, and then I talked to a tree and we walked around, and it's like, okay, I guess, like, we've heard of Ents before, right? Like, that's at least within the realm of possibility. And then at one point he's like, yeah, and I was sitting on this castle and this giant green light shot up into the sky, and they're like, well, that seems weird. And then the next day there was a big battle. So I went out and we stood in front of this back gate, and the gate's open, and I looked into Mordor, and there was this giant tower, and there was this giant fiery eyeball looking at us. And guess what? That was the bad guy the whole time. We're like, no, it wasn't. There's no fiery eyeballs. Like, that part seems so ludicrous and so, like, to the next step, that when the gate opens and everyone sees that, like, everyone just be like, that's the bad guy? Like, the big fire eye? Like, what the heck's going on? Like, there's some real magic going on there that, like, we don't understand. Something to that extent. Again, favorite part of this movie. It's all good. If I had to go back and watch, like, a part, do I have a favorite part? I don't. No. My praise is kind of my favorite part. So I kind of buggered that one up. But we're going to go with imagining Pippin having to tell the story to his friends back home.
I just imagine them just like having a beer and be like, no, it really happened. Oh yeah.
Yeah, sure it did, Pip. Sure it did.
Of course, whatever you say. And it's like, no, seriously, there was dragons flying around at one point.
And I knocked a skeleton down a well.
It's like, sure it was. And then there was this giant like monster, and it chased us, and there was goblins and orcs everywhere. Sure, Pippin, sure. It's like, no, I swear it happened. Or him telling his grandkids this. Like,
yeah,
I think that's super cool.
I guess my favorite part of this, like, just stepping back to, if it was not just like a part, is just how well the story escalates. Because when you think of the Fellowship, like, you have like these little beats, and they're being chased, and then, you know, like, there's a little battle, and then there's an army, and then there's a bigger battle, and you get to the end, and Tolkien did such an amazing job of ramping everything up to the point where you can have a giant battle with elephants and ghosts that show up, right? And this like epic battle inside of Mount Doom. It's done really well, right? So
as a storyteller, he's amazing. Like,
yeah.
To nail an ending.
Yeah, and maybe that's what I'll say. I'll say the storytelling of Lord of the Rings as a whole is, yeah, they nail the ending. It's satisfying. It all makes sense. It all plays into each other. It's phenomenal. Right, you know, they built up the Witch King as a character, and no man can kill him. What's the go around? Eowyn's a woman, right? And you're like, huh, neat, cool.
Yeah, it's like very clever. I see what you did there.
Yeah,
but it's like the first movie's kind of like the starting of the journey, the forming of the Fellowship, and then, you know, number 2 is all about like the actual implications of the threats. And then number 3 is the threats are here.
Well, it's
they're beckoning.
Almost local versus global, right? Like, 2 is the resolution of the local threat. Saruman, who's kind of like keeping this corridor and fucking with people, they get rid of him. And now it's like, but the global threat, this guy's going to take over the whole world. It's not just your little neck of the woods, right? Like, he's not just going to go to the Shire and like burn down some forests. He's going to like take over everything. Darkness will be everywhere. So it is kind of that, it's just the increase of stakes, right, which I really enjoy. So how about most notable scene or part of a movie? So this is the section of, you think of Lord of the Rings, I say Return of the King, what's the first thing that pops up? Or years later you want to sit and talk with somebody, you're like, oh man, that was a really cool place, right? So we have Pippin's infatuation with the black ball, the Witch King's look, really nice helmet. Arwen dying, I know, that was my favorite part. The lighting of the beacons, I feel like that's one of those scenes that kind of is really cool. And you see just the little lights, big sweeping cinematic shots of these mountain ranges, and you see little like torches going up. When Pippin is singing during the battle, right? I like that kind of part. Gandalf's light as he rides out in the field, he like fights off the Nazgul as the shadows kind of creep across the field. Sam falling down the steps, looks like it hurts. Shelob, the Battle of Pelennor Field. Could it be the Elephants with the racism? The Ghost Army, the Witch King dying. I am no man, you know. Flaming Stewart, He lights on fire, and then he runs something like, it's like 500 meters to jump off a ledge.
Yeah.
Battle of the Black Gates for Frodo, and everyone runs after him. Smeagol falling into lava, eagles showing up, or the long goodbyes. Of those, what do you think of the most notable scene? When you think Return of the King, what's the one thing you're like, oh yeah, the movie with that part in it?
For me, it's the stairs. Like, I don't really have a big fear of heights, but those stairs just get to me. Like, you just feel like one wrong step, and because the hobbits are so small, you kind of like realize it's basically a ladder to, like, it's a ladder made out of like rock, and like one wrong step, there's not really places for you to rest. Like, you just got to keep climbing. And it's like a gust of wind could knock you off, but because these hobbits are so small, they can just like almost tuck into these things, and you just like, that just freaks me out, because it's like that, and they have the right next to the Witch King's like castle, and it's super like cinematic, but it's kind of hard to pick because there's just so many moments of this movie that are
beautiful.
So yeah, it's like cinematography is amazing. Like, the Gandalf riding out to save those guys is so, like, man, the tracking shot, just like how they filmed that was like, wow, this is so good. Like, it's gorgeous. It could almost be a painting.
It is, like, literally that scene where they're flying over it and you see the darkness creeping over it, and then Gandalf's light shines and the music plays and it's awesome. And then even like Faramir having to ride back out to battle just as Pippin is singing is amazing. And there's another part where I kind of noticed when they're standing at the doors before the orcs are about to break into the city, Pippin's like, I didn't know this is how it's going to end. Gandalf looks at him and was like, end? This isn't the end, my boy. He's like, things do not end this way. He's like, it's not over. He's like, we still have a chance of this fight. It's not done. And it's like just such a beautiful moment for Ian McKellen to sit there and just be like, no, like, you know, just because things look bleak, don't give up hope. Like, hope's the only thing that's going to keep us. Like, that's the only reason we're fighting is because of hope. Like, let's keep going, right? And it's just like such a beautiful moment, right? And it
totally. And the divergent storylines where it's like, we're following, like, this is really like the Aragorn and Gandalf and Pippin.
I would say the one thing is they do nerf the Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli trio in this movie because and they do it really well. You know, here's your mission. It's this, you know, there's prestige. You have to have this magical sword. Go get these ghosts, and then they just disappear. So I would say this is almost the best Ian McKellen movie, right? This is the best Gandalf movie. He gets to step up. He's in charge. He's calling his shots. You know, he's lighting the beacons and calling for help. He's saving people. He's, you know, giving the speeches.
Oh yeah, he's making the plays, and it's like, unless he's here holding down the fort, it's like Gondor's gone.
Yeah, so like he really steps up in this one, and I really like that too. And right, and even like Merry and Pippin, they have big roles in this one. Bigger, they're not just sitting on a tree and talking, right? Like they get to kind of have the Aragorn where they're like, hey, go find the trees and make an army and like fight from it, do the sneak attack. They get to kind of step into the forefront, right, and kind of show off their acting chops a little bit that they've been denied. So it does a really nice job of, if you took every movie of like what character has what to do, I bet you they're almost dead even in terms of importance and like plot relevance. And like, how do you do that with 8 to 9 characters? It's incredible.
Yeah. Well, and it's like that final scene, the for Frodo, and like, like it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, all these people are doing this. Like, they're essentially like, and they're seeing this massive army come towards them and surround them, and there's this small speck. Like, they're already just dwarfed and outnumbered, and more are coming. And it's like, what are we gonna do? It's like, well, we are going to try to stand our ground and delay this as long as we can, so Frodo and Sam can do what they need to do.
Yeah, no, and
it's like,
most notable scene, I think it might be the Black Gates and the for Frodo, right, where Aragorn's running, and then the next two people are the hobbits, right, and just in that same vein where everyone else is kind of hesitant to go into battle, but you see the hobbits being like, no, for our friend, right, and they kind of take off before everyone else goes. It's been done better. You know, as I was watching it last night, I was like, oh, Infinity War does this better. When they all go to fight the guys and like Captain America and Black Panther are running, and all of a sudden Captain America starts running, like, that's a better scene. So like they've done it better, but up until that Infinity War scene, the best like running into battle scene and like kind of a clash of armies was probably this.
Yeah, see, I think that this hits harder because it's compared to like the superhero stuff. It's like they're superheroes. You're like they're gods.
Yeah.
They're running in a battle where it's like, okay, we got to fight some other gods. It's
Yeah.
like, for me, it's like those hobbits are charging against orcs and golems, or not golems, but like orcs and like goblins and giant trolls, and they're like, no, fuck you. This is where we stand. We're probably gonna die. This is a suicide charge. We see the numbers. This is a numbers game, and like that big shot where it's like you see them funnel out, and they're like half circle around them, and there's just this small holding a like little group of people like. And one of the first people to run out are some of the most vulnerable people. Like, the hobbits can't take on a troll. The hobbits can barely take on an orc if like it's a one-on-one fight. It's like, but for them to like lead the charge, it's like, man, that's such a good character moment. It's like,
Yeah.
some of the most vulnerable people that were like basically kind of got tagged along to this. It's like, no, we've grown, we've done this. We can stand up to them because that's why we're here.
Well, and the conclusion to these two parts that we're talking, like really the climax, that emotional climax, is when the coronation of the king, and Aragorn comes over and they go to bow, and they're like, no, you bow to literally no one. Like, you guys are like, you saved the entire world. You four little characters who were inconsequential, who we think are children, we make fun of and pick on. Like, you don't have any strength. Like, you've shown more strength than the entire collective men race in Middle Earth, you know, in this last year kind of thing. So it's just so good. You know, like...
Totally. And it's like, it took all the people of Middle Earth to push back. It was,
everything.
You know,
It was a group effort,
dwarves, there's wizards, there's humans, but it's also like, there's the unassuming hobbits. So, it's very cool. Like, I mean, I like, the more I gush about this, the more I just love it. So, it's like, oh, my goodness, this is such masterful storytelling. It's so good.
Although, I'll be honest with you, where the hell are all the dwarfs and elves during this final battle?
Well, the elves are booking a vacation.
But, like, some of them showed up for Helm's Deep, and you're telling me that more of them weren't like, oh, we should, like, keep battling, or, like, all the elf soldiers were at Helm's Deep?
I think that's from the people in the elves in the forest. Like, all of Rivendell is essentially leaving. Like, they're packing their bags and they're leaving. And the dwarves are too busy thinking about their treasure and their stuff. But the dwarves seem very, like, underdeveloped. That's kind of like, well, getting into some of the criticisms of this. It's the dwarves' presence where there's, like, you see the most amount of dwarves in the council meeting, and that's it.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Like there are divisions and, like, the Ballins and the dwarfs of the Iron Hills. Like, why were they not rallied at some point to battle as well? I don't know. It just seems strange. All right, so that's kind of our points there. About our least favorites. Let's talk about the negatives before we end with final praise. So least favorite parts of this movie. I just don't like that 25 minutes when Sam and Frodo aren't friends. I hate when Sam falls down the stairs, and like Frodo just shouldn't be hanging out with Gollum by himself. Like that should have been a rule they established early on. They're just so cute together. I don't like seeing the part. I know I've actually mentioned this on other podcasts. I was listening to something and I just said I don't like that part. Like as soon as they kind of fight, I'm like, eh. And even during this time, I'm like, I got up and I like did dishes and I took like the recycling out, and then I was like, oh, what else could I do? And like put some cushions away outside because I knew it was gonna rain. So like, that was like my chore part of this movie, and I just never liked that. What's your least favorite part of this movie?
Well, every time Liv Tyler shows up.
Yeah, that's right.
But no, that scene is very like frustrating because it's like, and I kind of take it more as that's the ring taking deeper hold of Frodo, where it's creating this divide, but it's done in such a way where it makes you kind of like resent Frodo. But I think that also kind of speaks to the strength of Sam's love for Frodo, where it's like, I don't care. Tell me to leave. I'm doing this. Like, I'm going to save you. Like, and because of Sam's like dedication to his buddy, it's like he doesn't end up being eaten by Shelob, and Gollum doesn't just take the ring and then probably immediately get captured.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. A final criticism. We got to say something bad about this. And we'll end with a positive, but like final criticism. You know, we've gushed for 30 minutes and said this is great. The pacing isn't great. there are highs, then there's some lows, and some things just don't really seem to matter, right? I mean, like in the grand scheme of things, you probably could have cut out the Faramir character altogether, and you would have saved yourself like 30 minutes of movies over the course of 2 movies, right? Like I understand it's kind of important, but like also kind of useless, whereas then there's other scenes that are like super important, and it's just long. And in a rewatch of these movies, I would gladly do Fellowship, Two Towers, and sometimes I skip this movie. I'm going to hopefully the Podtendo cut, as it's now hereforth returned. I might watch this movie a little more frequently, knowing it's only a 2-hour incursion, and I kind of do get the conclusion of the story. But it's just that thing where it's so long, and it's hard to get to, and like it's stuck behind 2 amazing cinematic experiences, and I don't know if it hits the same heights. And like, again, I think Two Towers is the greatest thing man has ever filmed. It might be the greatest cinematic thing ever that we made. It is the culmination of practical, digital storytelling, books, movies, you know what I mean? Like just so many things, like our culture, our pop culture, fantasy in general. And then this movie just doesn't quite hit those same marks, right?
Yeah.
But like, it's still a good experience. And overall, and I'm glad, and like, you almost have to look at all 3 movies as one big movie, but like in individual film, would you ever just watch Return of the King? I don't know if you could, right?
Yeah, like maybe the most hardcore Lord of the Rings fans would, but I'm kind of like, because these are so tied, and like, being a James Bond fan, I'm not just randomly going to watch Quantum of Solace. It's usually like, I'm going to watch Casino Royale, then I'll watch Quantum of Solace. It's not like, because they're shot, like they start right after, Quantum of Solace starts immediately after like Casino Royale. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those movies where you're like, would I just watch that by itself? No. You would watch Casino Royale and then plan to watch it like almost immediately after, like the next day. And I kind of get that feeling from this movie. But I guess my like a small little nitpicky thing is that one goofy orc dude.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, why is he here?
Yeah.
You literally don't need to be like, I am the general. It's like you literally don't need to do that. It almost works better if you're a faceless army of just mass killing machines to know that Mr. Goofy Face, who spits on a rock, is standing there. It's like, who cares?
Well, they kind of had to add, a little something, right? Because, I mean, they'd done such good work with Wormtongue and did Saruman, right? And, like, Sauron isn't really a presence. They kind of had to have some type of, what do I want to call it? Avatar, like a villain avatar. So they chose him, right? So, like, his death scene means something because, like, you kind of have that experience. Same with, like, the Witch King. He's not super well-developed character. Like, they might be the weakest of the villain characters in all these movies. But you kind of, like, well, we need something. Right, so I understand why they made him, but yeah, like,
Yeah, but see, I think that you kind of don't, because you're fighting you're almost fighting it back against the idea of how evil like they are, whereas it's like I don't need Sauron leading the charge. Like in Helm's Deep, there's not like here's the general guy.
Well,
like,
but you kind of have Saruman as like the overarching villain there. You know what I mean? Like, I think they just have to put a face on it.
Yeah.
It could be worse. They could have been like, there's a pale orc and he chases the Fellowship the whole time and stuff like that. Like the Hobbit did. Like the Hobbit. The Hobbit took this to the next level. I think at the level they do with this one, it's like kind of okay, but then they get carried away. So like, but your criticism of like, well, if they didn't make this guy, they wouldn't have had the white orc. Yeah, it's dumb. I agree.
Yeah, it's just a minor nitpick, but that's just my criticism. It's like that guy didn't need to be there.
Again, you have to super nitpicky. You gotta be like, I don't like that. Yeah, sure, why not? Okay, how about praise? Our final praise before we get out of this movie that we've only said good things about. All right, so the whole thing's a massive undertaking. They pulled it off. Great job by them. But I did not give the man his dues this whole time. We barely talked about Frodo, Elijah Wood's performance in this. He does a lot in the Fellowship. In the Two Towers, he's nerfed a little bit. Again, not a lot to do. But in this movie, he brings it. He brings it hard in this film. The acting he does with his eyes is just unreal. There's a part where on the steps, and Gollum says, like, Sam's going to betray you. And he's sitting there, and he's just tired. And there's a moment where he's like, I could take the ring from you. And all of a sudden, his eyes just kind of, like, widen. And then he has this like side glance, and it's everything. You understand everything that's going on in his mind, his character, with just subtle face acting. He's our protagonist, right? He's the character most negatively affected by this quest, and that's what I meant. Choices, right? what did Gimli ultimately give up giving up a year of his life to go on this quest? He has a elf friend. What did Legolas give up? He has a dwarf friend. What did Aragorn ultimately give up? He got his girlfriend and he's a king. Like Sam, he ended up married. He has a family. Merry and Pippin, they have some stories to tell while they're drinking, right? Like, Gandalf died, but he came back. Like, he's now a more powerful wizard. Faramir, was it not Faramir? Boromir. Well, he died. Okay, so he gave up a lot. Like, he gave up his life. But, like, ultimately, Frodo is broken. He's changed. He's had, more pain endured than anyone else in this land outside of maybe Gollum, right, over the course of his really long life. But he has just been tortured and punished, and he comes back and he's like, I can't live in this world anymore because I died. Like, he did die during this quest, and now his, like, empty shell is going through life, and that's why he says, like, I need to go to the Great Harbor with the elves to be away because there's nothing for me in this world. So ultimately, he gives up the most. He gives up his entire existence, his life, and that's kind of more than anyone else in the Fellowship really, really gave up, right?
Yep. Oh, totally. And I think that, like, the acting is just amazing. But yeah, Frodo's character he's just like a broken husk of a person, and he's so mentally twisted to a point where, like, his best friend, who he would do anything for, I think, like, at one point he ends up almost, like, getting stabbed trying to help out Sam. Like, he isn't that person by the end of it. Like, he's just so damaged, mentally twisted, and you think, like, he's like, that's why he's like, oh, and it's kind of hard to convey in a movie, is the rings twist on him, but you do, like, they do a really good job. Like, he slowly just, like, you see the color draining from his face, and just got these black rings, and he's just, like, to a point where he's, like, about gonna drop the ring, and it's like, no, I'm not. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna take this. And you're like, yeah, that's who he is. He is the guy who dies in the very beginning, the one king who chops off the Sauron's hand, and then is like, Boromir, like, destroy it. And he's like, no, I'm not going to. It took that guy, like, a couple of, like, maybe a day or two, or what feels like the same afternoon. And it took, like, Frodo had this thing with him the whole time, and it's like, he was so good, and he essentially sacrificed himself. And that's, like, during this scene, the Council of Rivendell scene, where he's like, I'll take it. And then Gandalf just, like, he knows what that decision's going to do. Well, he knows that he's like, this is essentially you signing a death warrant on yourself. Like, and it's not only are you putting yourself into massive danger, but this thing, you can't carry this.
Well, and it just, like, it changes you, and you come back and you're altered, right? I mean, it's kind of the cost of war. Really, he's the only character that positively reflects the negative cost of war, right? Where he has his post-traumatic stress, right? Like, he underdid some things, he saw some stuff, he will never, ever be the same, right? Like, he is ultimately changed as a result, and he can't deal with it, and ultimately ends up leaving, right? It's like he kind of gives up his life and goes away with the elves, right? To be in, like, a better place, in theory, right? And that's kind of the ultimate... that's what all soldiers do, right? Anyone that goes through these traumatic experiences, you're always a little changed and altered, and it is hard to do in film. But I think Frodo does an excellent job of... Elijah Wood's just, he looks tortured. Like, you feel so bad for the guy by the end, right? And he's just never, ever quite the same. So it's good. How about Payson? How about a final praise from you?
Yeah, well, I think I just have to echo your sentiments. I was going to choose the cinematography because it's just, like, I absolutely... Movies aren't shot like this anymore. It's so beautiful. Every scene is basically like this gorgeous oil painting where I can just take snippets of my mind, and you're just like, every scene is so incredible. And that's the use of the practical effects and with the touch of CGI, where it's like, I haven't seen a movie like this potentially ever. Like, I mean, I love The Shining, and, like, that's Stanley Kubrick at his finest, where it's like every scene's super cool, and there's all these amazing shots, like the tracking shot at the beginning, or even just the shot of the hallways or whatever. It's all very amazing. But this has, like, this adventure to it, and your mind just races, where you feel like you could just see snippets of this movie, and it's just like every scene is so beautiful. So yeah, it's like they just don't make movies like that. Like I can't think of a single movie I've seen in a long time that has that level of like beauty to it and depth of fields. Whereas I find with like CGI is they just blur the backgrounds because it's easier in CGI. You don't really need like the off distance. Like here's just a sunset off in the distance or whatever and some background. It's like that. It takes away from the experience where it's like, oh yeah, you know, it looks pretty or that CGI monster looks interesting. But at the same time, it's like there's just standing in front of nothing. Whereas this, it felt like everything that they used had like all the backgrounds were well thought out. And it's so just incredible.
Yeah. So for example, spoilers, we're recording this after I watched at least, I don't know how many are out, but at least the first House of the Dragon episode. So if you've watched that as well, approximately, I'm looking it up, about $20 million per episode. So they spent $200 million to make 10 hours of content for Game of Thrones today. So 20 years after Return of the King, they spent about $20 million, so $200 million. That's half the budget for those episodes. So pretty close to on par to what they spent to this movie for a TV show that I would argue does not look as good as this. So in contrast to watching the brand new Game of Thrones, HBO's premiere, show, I don't think it looks as good as this movie. That's 20 years old. The dragons look just as good as the dragons the Witch King drives, like rides, like I'm like, it looks like a dragon, like they use them probably about the same amount, but it's just amazing how much work they've done to echo your sentiments of how beautiful this movie looks and like the cinematography that they did. It holds up. It's timeless. These will always look good, right? Like if you ever have kids and grandkids, your grandkids will be able to watch this one day and be like, wow, what a great, like when was that movie made? Last year? Like, no, this was like 40 years ago.
Yeah. It's like, well, and it's just, it's a timeless classic where I find that like, because the craftsmanship of every scene and the backgrounds and all the set pieces and all the actors just nailing every second of it. It's like, man, you just don't see the stuff like this. Like, it's one of those things where, like, if they redid, like, hey, it's been 30 years, let's re-release these all in IMAX, I would go in a heartbeat. Because you're like, I'd love to see that in a gigantic screen. Because just take me away on a cinematic ride. Like, this is why I go to movies.
Yeah, it's exactly. That's one of those things. Why we love movies. This is it right here. It's funny. I'm glad that we got to it now when it's a little bit more relevant. We're a little bit more experienced. I think we're probably a little bit stronger podcasters at this point, 6 years into our journey versus we were years ago. I know these were on, I had some Twitter polls at some point and we picked, it was everything. Jurassic Park got picked over this, and then like Austin Powers got picked over this, and Back to the Future, right? Like just it kind of kept getting overlooked. It's been on our radar ever since we kind of did our very first SideQuest cinema way back in the day with Star Wars, right? So the fact that we finally got to it holds up, and we'll do more obviously after this. I think next year we're literally watching all the X-Men movies, but it is kind of a nice culmination of trilogies, right? Like I'm glad we were able to do it justice when we were talking about it today and kind of dive through that. So good job.
Absolutely. And I feel that now that we are more experienced, there's less buts and likes and pauses, and it's just I don't want to talk about, like, I don't want to struggle to talk about something that's so amazing. And I feel like maybe a little bit overlooked because it's kind of fallen out of favor this year with the Ring of Power coming out. And Amazon now finally releasing these things, but I remember for the longest time I couldn't find anywhere to stream these unless you owned the DVDs or bought it on iTunes. You're like, I can't watch these movies.
Yeah, it made a resurgence on Netflix at some point.
Yeah, I think it was, but I don't think it lasted.
Well, because then Amazon bought it
in 6 months.
Right, they purchased it, they had it, the streaming rights, and then Amazon went over the top, paid all this money, like $1 billion for them or something like that, right? And they took them and then kind of hid them, because why would you make a streaming service that people want to watch? Good job, Amazon.
Why would you want to have content on your streaming service? That's ridiculous.
Stupid. All right,
just put some more reality TV shows out there. Fart those out like 30 episodes every 2 months.
I go like Amazon Prime Fire Stick that I have. I go Amazon Prime, click. I'm like, I want to watch Lord of the Rings. I literally have to type in the two towers for two towers to show up. Like, why isn't that at the top of your page? Like, watch Lord of the Rings.
I know they did an update, so I think it's now showing because they got all the Hobbits on there and all the Lord of the Rings, and it's like right next to their because Ring of Power's coming out in probably by the time you're listening to this, the first episode's already out. So they're finally doing it, but it took them years. Like, I mean, they essentially locked this in the Disney vault, and we're like, no, we're not discussing this massive purchase for $1 billion for the next 10 years. You suckers will just have to wait.
Smart. Cool. So that's it. Anything else just on kind of the movies? We have a fan theory. We're going to go Wayback Machine to kind of look at what the pop cultural landscape. I've got a cultural significance game to play at the end here. Anything else? No? Did we do it justice?
Just a thank you for all the people who made these movies.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Seriously.
Yeah, no, very good, very good. We can enjoy them forever, right? Great, awesome. So, and are you buying it? So, a theory, here we go. So, Mary probably should have ended up with Éowyn. They had the cute relationship, right? She kind of ends up with Faramir, who seems kind of like the silver bronze medal in this situation. She was kind of a dumb character, but then she killed the Witch King. You're like, oh, that's kind of neat. Or, how about this one? Tomatoes drove Denethor crazy. So tomatoes were introduced into European cultures in the 1300s. They would often be cooked in pewter pots and served on pewter plates. Tomatoes are very acidic. The acidic tomatoes would release lead from the pewter cookware. Lead can cause mental breakdowns. Guess what Denethor is eating on a pewter plate?
I like it. And you know what? I think the people who made this probably would have done like that kind of like, you know what? He's using this goofy cookware. Mm-hmm. And, you know, if we start dropping the seeds of, and you make a paranoid man give him lead poisoning, he's going to be crazy.
There was definitely some.
And make absolutely bonkers moves like, no, you guys are going to ride out and you're going to retake that city. It's like, that's a suicide mission. There's like 12 of us. You really want us to ride out there? It's like, yes.
Yeah.
Take the city.
Ooh,
that's your job.
I would guess some kid with a history degree. He had a master's degree in history, and specifically he learned about tomato use in European cultures. But you can't do anything with that. So he became a carpenter. So one day on set while he's building it, they were talking about something, and he's like, well, actually, maybe you should eat tomatoes. And they're like, shut up, carpenter. Wait, why? And he came over and explained. He's like, here's my whole thesis. I spent like 6 years of my life working on this one statement. And they're like, cool, man, we'll move that in the movie. So like that one guy was redeemed by this.
Yeah, I like that theory.
Yeah.
I like that theory.
Well, why are you a carpenter today instead of using your history major? He's like, because I'm a history major. I have $50,000 worth of student loans that I can't pay off because what do you do with a history major? So I became a carpenter.
Yep. But I ended up working on a little-known movie called Lord of the Rings.
Not a big deal. Yesterday, I built a bed frame for a porno movie, too. So now I'm making bank.
Pretty big deal.
Pretty big deal. So called Whore of the Rings was the porn parody.
Yes. Well, you know what? Those porn directors, they're pretty good at coming up with those ideas.
Ooh, all right. So then with that, we're going to jump into our patented Wayback Machine as we end on a porn joke. Good job, us. We're going to travel back to December 17th, 2003, and ask the age-old question, do we want to live there? We're going to start out by asking Tyson, what's your favorite show? Could it be The Simpsons, Season 15, Episode 7? See, now that I've done a couple in the last couple weeks, I feel like it's flowing a little bit. That's usually what I say. 'Tis the 15th season, so Homer spends all the family's Christmas money on himself, causing him to become the nicest man in town. Or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Season 2, Episode 5, Turtles in Space? Part 5, Triceraton Wars. The turtles are faced with their biggest challenge yet. Getting home? Just nothing. You don't get a fucking clue what's going on.
No. I don't even know, I'm assuming they're in Dimension X and the Triceratons are around? Or maybe they're in space right now. That's what's happening. Yes. Oh, yes. You know, not the strongest cartoons, but I'm definitely going to go Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles over The Simpsons because this is season 15 Simpsons. It's not great at this point.
We know it's not good. All right, cool. So good job, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Chain reaction.
Cool. I might have at some point watched a retrospective on this series. And the guy went through and
What, the Shell?
talked all the episodes and stuff. And he's like, is it better than the original 1987 one? And I was like, yeah, probably. It seems like it's a little more cohesive, and there's like a through line, and like I kind of like the Shredder's Krang, and like I kind of like that, and kind of neat. So,
yeah. I mean, everybody likes to dump on them because they just use Shell for swearing all the time, so they'll drop that like 20 times in an episode. But I the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is kind of just like goofy monster of the week, but it's like just cheesy 80s cartoons. So it's like there's no stakes. There's no stakes in any of this. I remember watching this one a lot. I wasn't like, oh, this is clearly the greatest TV show ever, but like it's watchable.
Cool. Other TV shows you could be watching though are The OC, One Tree Hill, Carnival, Cold Case, Arrested Development, Nip Tuck, Dead Like Me, or NCIS. You're like, oh, no, those do it for me. Oh, top cartoons. We saw Teen Titans, Venture Brothers, Tex Hollison. I don't know what that is. The Berenstain Bears, Spider-Man, the new animated series, Jacob Tutu, and Duck Dodgers.
Oh, man, this is not too bad for cartoons. I mean, good Teen Titans, not that crappy Go one. Venture Brothers, I love it because, I mean, it's just like a riff on a parody of like the old Hanna-Barbera cartoons. And then, I mean, Duck Dodgers in the 21st century, whatever the heck it is. It's like, that's a great one. I remember that one. And like Jacob Tutu, not a terrible show when you got home from school and you just needed cartoons immediately. So
Nice.
Yep.
All right. Other movies, though. And you're like, that doesn't do anything. I want to go to the Real House. See what's on the silver screen. Top movies, nothing opened against it. Wonder why. Still in theaters, though, you could see Something's Gotta Give, Stuck on You, Big Fish, The Last Samurai, and The Haunted Mansion. Okay, all right. If you waited a week or two, you could see Peter Pan, Mona Lisa's Smile, Cheaper by the Dozen, Paycheck, and Cold Mountain.
You'll never take Cold Mountain.
All right.
We battle for Middle Earth. That terrible Mad TV skit I still remember after all these years.
So we watched that when we played Gauntlet Legends. Tyson mentioned it. We made a watch. If you have a reference and that sparked something in your mind like it did us, Mad TV, Cold Mountain versus Lord of the Rings. They're on Family Feud, and that's it. They're like, you'll never take Cold Mountain. We battle, and they just like fight. It's awful.
It is, and it's like 2 minutes, and you're like, how did this get greenlit? It referenced two popular movies.
It's like 8 minutes long. That's it. They have one joke, so.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. Other than that, like, I mean, Big Fish, pretty good. Last Samurai is really good. Haunted Mansion's not bad. Paycheck, decent. I mean, then you got some crappy comedies like Stuck on You and Cheaper by the Dozen, which I mean, if you had a date or something, it's not bad,
that's
I
what
guess.
Stuck on You is about the Siamese twins.
Yeah, with Matt Damon as the one, and then who's the other guy?
Stuck on You movie. I kind of remember Greg Kinnear.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, and they're like,
and he's the actor, and has a, and they just, I usually used to dress Matt Damon up because he has stage fright as a plant. Oh, brilliant!
What a shitty, but all right.
Oh yeah, I was like, how did this ever get made?
It's like that improv thing where like there's like a guy who plays the other hand, your arms, and you have to like talk and the arms do stuff. They're like, what if we made a movie about this with Matt Damon? Cool, great, awesome. All right, that does nothing for you. Maybe we're like, psh, those movies sucked. I hate this. I'm gonna go buy a video game, taking my anger out on my mom because I'm an angsty teenager. Top video games. You could see 180 or 1080 Avalanche, Beyond Good and Evil, Deus Ex, Invisible War, Max Payne 2, Silent Hill 3, and Sonic Heroes.
Oh, okay, interesting. Some little gems in there, and then you got like your Sonic Heroes. Yeah. So, yeah, not bad. I think Silent Hill 3 is one of the last good ones, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Silent Hill would be an interesting. Like I know, like I'm more of a Resident Evil fan. I know those ones. Silent Hill, I'm like kind of always like, should I get into these? Are they good? They made movies about them with Kid Harington in them. How bad could they be?
Is he in those movies? Oh, yeah, he's in the second one.
Yeah, he's definitely in the second one. And you're like, what the fuck?
Oh, why is Kid Harington in this?
Like, Jon Snow? What the fuck? Huh. All right, cool. Awesome.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
He doesn't.
every time he's on screen, just like
Quit it.
Yeah.
All right, and then finally, maybe the top 3 songs. We're like unsure if you want to live there. I don't know if this is going to do anything for it. It's actually a pretty solid little lineup we got. So top 3 songs go to the Billboard charts. Number 3 is "Baby Boy" by Beyonce and featuring Sean. Okay.
Yep, that was the song.
That's all right. Like, I mean, it's not the best. It just sounds like a normal pop song, so that's all right. But the number 2 song was "Stand Up" by Ludacris. Where he has the big shoe, because that's my favorite song.
Yep.
Yeah.
I might be one of the weird people, but I can't stand Ludacris.
What?
I none of his songs ever hit for me. I was always like, oh, this song.
Oh, I only liked his big shoe video, then once in a while I just talk about that. Whenever I kick stuff, I'm like, I'm just pretending I'm like Ludacris with his big shoe. And people like smile and they're like, oh yeah, I forgot that was a thing. He just had a big shoe.
You know what? That's he might redeem. You're right. He's redeeming himself with that giant shoe.
Like I'm the same way. I don't care about Ludacris at all, but the fact he had a big shoe for a while, I was like, and he like jumps on the ground and people shake. I'm like, I wish I had Ludacris's big shoe. But the number 1 song is actually kind of a banger. It's still on like running playlists I have today. It's solid. You ever at like a wedding, request this one, everyone's gonna be up like dancing. It's fucking sick. It's "Hey Ya" by Outkast. Solid banger track.
Yep. The song that causes more car crashes.
Well, you gotta shake it like a Polaroid.
Because you just can't. You have to shake it. It's just, that's the song says.
It's great. It's great. No Nickelback today. Unfortunately, I couldn't get Nickelback in here. I tortured Tyson enough in the last 2 episodes. So there you go. No Nickelback. Pretty solid. Not great. Am I gonna go back there? Nah. I'm all right.
Yeah, no, TV's crap. Cartoons are pretty mediocre. Video games are in a rough patch. No. And Ludacris is number 2. Yep, I'm not going back.
And Big Shoe, love it. Not enough to travel back in time. So there you go. So that wraps that up. So final cultural significance. Put in a bow tie on this bad boy. We're all good. So there we go. So cultural significance. In this section, I changed it. We journey through the film series. We look at Books to Movies, the game franchise edition family fun game. We also looked at historic nonfiction famous characters family, the game franchise edition family fun game. And in this episode, we will look at special editions / extra content / behind the scene material on DVDs. Oh, you're going to be so disappointed when you find out what happened. So I went and set up a game where we look at like weird, unique DVD content, we put them up against each other, have a little fun, but I could find nothing about it. Like just something simple of just like weird content on DVD menus. How many hours of extra content is there in the Lord of the Rings editions? And they kept telling me about extended versus theatrical cuts. I was like, no. Extra content. I wanted like behind the scenes content. How many hours? I could not find a definitive answer. So I quit. I'm sure it's hundreds. Couldn't verify it. So I was like, all right. So to that end, I was like, what else is there? And I remember DVD menus or like extra contents, nothing. Like very, very limited stuff on the internet. I know Harold and Kumar, like for example, they have funny scenes where if you leave the menu on long enough, it's just them driving in the car and they start like talking. Like, why aren't they pressing play? Like, I don't know, dude. Just drive on. Like, let's pretend nothing happens. And like, it'll be like a couple minutes later and he's like, still nothing. He's like, I know. They're just sitting there looking at us. It's really strange. Like maybe if we just don't do anything, they'll press play at some point. It's kind of funny. A lot of Will Ferrell movies had like hidden scenes. My roommate at one point would like go and like click everywhere, and like on like the scene select, if you pressed over twice, he'd end up on the special scene that like showed you a deleted scene that was like nowhere else to be found. It's cool. It's great. But apparently It's just a very quiet part of the internet, right? Kids don't talk about DVDs.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to find a niche for a YouTube channel, I think you could like deep dive into like weird extra content on movies. So not talk about the movies themselves, but like what's on the special edition extra content Mortal Kombat DVD, and you could just like make a 20-minute video just where you discuss that. So I'm giving a free idea away.
Yeah. Well, I also remember Harold and Kumar had the Choose Your Own Adventure.
Yeah.
That was really cool. I was like, oh, that's awesome. That's the reason why you buy a DVD. Like, they obviously added extra scenes just so they could do this. And you're like, I appreciate this.
That's what I mean.
And DVDs are just so gone now, where it's like, if you're lucky to get a bloody director's commentary anymore, it feels like.
Well, even director's commentary. Some of them, like some of the Will Ferrell ones, like the one for Talladega Nights, is like I still quote. Like I watched it once. It's a really epic story that they tell during the commentary, where they make up these like fake scenarios of like how scenes happened and stuff like that. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. I fell in love with those DVDs. Just super underappreciated. Again, kind of feel like there could be a possibility. So if anyone ever wanted like an idea, there you go. So instead, I pulled an audible. I made up a tournament for Tyson to decide. So one thing this movie did do that the first two films didn't was win Best Picture at the Academy Awards. Most people kind of assumed, like they even said, this isn't the best movie, maybe of the trilogy, but as a trilogy of a whole is amazing. We have to give it some type of awards because like you can't not give this, right? So let's look at a tournament for what is the best pictures from the last 31 years. So I got a bracket. I've got the top 8 movies, in my opinion, that won Best Picture in the last 30 years. The last 10 years, kind of lame. They're not bad. So you can pull up a list. You could decide for yourself. I ranked them 1 to 8. They're playing bracket tournament style. We're going to find out who wins. So in our first matchup, we're going to start. Number 1, the number 1 ranked film versus the number 8. We're going to get the 2003 film, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, versus the 1999 film, American Beauty. Tyson, of those two films, head-to-head in the tournament, who's winning?
Oh, Return of the King.
Return of the King. I'm going to grab a pen, and I'm going to grab a piece of paper. I'm going to keep tabs on what's going on. So I'm going to call this ROTK. They advance. Congratulations, Return of the King. How about the number 4? So we're going to drop down the bracket just one. We're going to get to the 4-5 matchup. We're going to have Gladiator from 2000 versus the 2007 masterpiece, No Country for Old Men. Of those two films, who's winning that one?
Now, this is a tough one, because I do love both these movies. Not picking American Beauty was easy, because I don't really like that movie. But Gladiator is one of those movies where I had to own it as a DVD. I still love that movie. It's fantastic. No Country for Old Men was one of that movies that made me appreciate filmmaking. Yeah. So this is a really hard toss-up. But just if I was going to watch a movie, I think I'd put in Gladiator over No Country for Old Men.
I'm very proud of my rankings. So we're gonna go Gladiator. That is a good one. Yeah, as soon as I saw it, I was kind of like, I kind of want to watch Gladiator this afternoon. All right, so number 2. So we're gonna jump into the bottom half of the bracket. So the number 2 seed, we have the 1991 hit film Silence of the Lambs versus the box office darling, the 1997 Leonardo DiCaprio movie Titanic. So we've got one of the greatest films of all time in Silence of the Lambs versus one of the highest grossing films in Titanic. These two are going head to head. Who's winning this one?
Well, James Cameron has his magic, but this movie is basically a romance movie based around a disaster.
Yeah.
And you have to be invested in the characters. I mean, I'm not, so I'm going with Silence of the Lambs. And I don't want to tip my hand too much for Silence of the Lambs, because I'll probably keep yammering on about it. But
so Lambs,
that movie is, Silence of the Lambs.
Lambs is moving on. Number 2 seed. It was a big victory. They blew him out. We thought Leo was going to do something, and then everyone was kind of like, it's kind of weird that like Rose, when she's an old woman, her bedside table is just pictures of her when she's younger, of herself, like not her family, not her grandkids. It's just her like riding a horse. Kind of fucking weird.
Yeah, it's almost like a little bit silly.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a little strange. How about the final pairing? We could have done a whole tournament of this, but I don't know. I only did 8 because I was strapped for time this morning. The number 3 film, hit film, Tom Hanks, great performance. The 1994 film Forrest Gump as our 3 seed against a play-in. I couldn't quite decide. I like all these movies. I don't know why like these other ones made it over them, but we have a play-in game. So we have the 09 Hurt Locker playing against Departed from 06 and 05's Crash. So first you have to decide, of those 3 movies, who's going up against Forrest Gump? And does it even matter in the end?
Well, Forrest Gump should have lost to Shawshank. Sorry. But of those 3 movies, Hurt Locker is... I was rooting for this movie because it had to go up against another behemoth of James Cameron, Avatar, and it absolutely smashed it. So Hurt Locker has this warm, fuzzy moment of me being right over James Cameron. Suck at James Cameron.
You idiot. You haven't even won a single game in this tournament, James Cameron. You walk around like you're some big shot. You suck.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I'm sure those new Avatar movies are going to be good. So Hurt Locker versus Departed. Because Crash isn't going to win. I like that movie, but it's not going to win. So I think I got to go Hurt Locker over to Departed. I like Departed, but Martin Scorsese movies all kind of start feeling the same after a while. I know people love those movies, yada yada yada. But
Leo pulled up limp there. Like he went for a dunk early on in the game and landed weird on his ankle, and he's headed to the bench. I don't know if he's going to return to this game, guys. He got hit pretty hard there by what's his face, James Reimer. Reamer. Jeremy Renner?
Jeremy
Renner. So Jeremy Renner. Yeah. So we have Hurt Locker after all that in an epic war movie versus another epic war movie in Forrest Gump.
Yep. So, and I think I got to go with Hurt Locker.
Oh, upset.
I know. But I think it's just because Forrest Gump, I remember loving that movie and being like, oh, this is such a fantastic movie. It's so good. And then, I don't know, time kind of wasn't kind to that movie. Yeah, I got to go with Hurt Locker on this one.
You know, that's tough. And, like, I did the same game. I was like, Departed. Lots of people love The Departed. It's a little long. And I was like, Crash. Crash is really good, too. Like, there's some moments in it you're like, fuck, that's crazy. But, like, Hurt Locker is also really fucking. And, like, I kind of was like, I thought they all kind of deserved that 6, right? Like, Titanic. Yeah. Titanic is Titanic. Like, you almost have to say, like, in the best 30 years, like, Titanic was such a monumental thing. And I do have a soft spot for American Beauty. So I feel, again, really good about my rankings here. So, and I like what's going on in this tournament. So we're going to go back up to the clash of the past. We have the historically accurate 2000s Gladiator versus the fictional 2003 Return of the King. So you got Gladiator, you got Return of the King. Who's coming out of this one?
Oof. Now this is tough. This is where they separates men from the boys here. Gosh, Gladiator is just such an amazing movie. Like Joaquin Phoenix just crushes it. Russell Crowe's top of his game. All the side characters are super entertaining, and you have great lines like, "It's not why you are here," as he's screaming at everybody. It's like so good.
Are you not entertained?
Yeah, and it gets that feels going, like the hair on the back of your neck stands up when like he's just doing his thing. But I gotta go Lord of the Rings here. I just do that. Like, I mean, this movie like almost sometimes makes me want to brings me to tears.
Oh, I was kind of joking about getting dusty, but yeah, talking about the sacrifice and like how great the storytelling is in Return of the King, like it does almost choke me up a little bit. Like it's like borderline enough to make me cry just talking about it. So like, I feel ya. Like, yeah. All
right. So Lord of the Rings. You're on to the finals.
All right, so we've got the upset of the tourney, the 09 Hurt Locker up against 1991 Silence of the Lambs. How is Jeremy Renner going to do against a young, cute, whatever her name is?
Foster?
No.
Jane?
No, not Foster. Jodie Foster. It is Jodie Foster. Great, awesome.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I'm like, it's a Foster. It's not like not Ben Foster, but it's a Foster.
Found it.
So Hurt Locker is amazing, and I think that it's as a character piece, like it's Jeremy Renner crushes it because he plays this like just mentally damaged individual that's crazy and out of his mind, but like does it in a very like real way. And I think the ending of that movie is so tight. It's you can watch this and you get the whole experience. Silence of the Lambs is a master, like it's another just absolute masterpiece. It's a classic. It's like there's so many scenes of this that are just eerie, and I mean it kickstarted a whole franchise. Like we got the Hannibal movies, the Red Dragon movie, like I know it was based off a book, but this was the thriller done right. Like the gentleman that plays Buffalo Bill, Ted Levine.
Yep.
Yeah, Ted Levine.
The gentleman that plays. I mean, good buying yourself time, but Buffalo Bill should not be called a gentleman. But all right.
No, but he's such a horrible monster, and like he is just manipulative, and like he puts the lotion on his skin or gets the hose again.
But he's like the ultimate
like,
example of like the creature or like the monster society created, right? Because he has this gender identity issue that's like drove him insane because he's been like picked on and ridiculed his whole life, and he's never felt comfortable because society wouldn't let him live normally, right? Yeah. So like Silence of the Lamb wouldn't work today because it's very like transphobic in this. They vilify this trans man, very much right? So. Like so much like I mean he does horrible things, but like you would think like nowadays it would just be like, here's some hormone therapy and like you do dress you do you, man. Like don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's like if you want to like dress pretty and like wear like have long hair, it's like do it.
Go
like,
for it.
More power to you. But I think that this is such a capsule of this time where people were very narrow-minded. We just got out of the 80s. Like, and it's so like, society created these like twisted individuals into, you know, what can be a horrible monster, somebody who skins other people and tortures them, and it's just and he does it so well. It's incredible. I have to go Silence of the Lambs. Right. I have to.
So we got this. So 2 seeds. So we thought there were some upsets along the way. No problem. We got number 1, number 2, just like every tournament you want. 99s or 91s, Silence of the Lambs versus The King, The Return of the King, the number 1 seed. Now, Return of the King is also the number 1 seed because we're talking about it. Like, I don't know if that's like it probably wouldn't make number 1 on my regular list, but all right. So we got 1 versus 2. Who's got this one?
Oh man, this is tough. Like this one, I like, you know, any given day, I might want to flip between these two. I do tend to lean Silence of the Lambs, but I'm gonna give it to The Return of the King. After us sitting down and talking about it, and like it's an emotional journey because I'm not just giving number 1 to Return of the King. I'm kind of giving it to the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Like that trilogy is the best trilogy we've ever gotten. Like I know maybe some people will say the original Star Wars is better or whatever, or Indiana Jones or whoever, but for me, I love fantasy. This was fantasy done right. This was the blending of CGI. It had characters that grew. It had impacts of characters' decisions, and it showed all sides of evil, from like an evil dad who would send his own son to his doom just because he's a fucking madman, and it has an entire army that's about to just take over the entire land. Like it is, the doomsday clock is at midnight and everything's hitting, and this is the culmination of all this stuff. And to know that like all these characters are making sacrifices, it's like, Frodo has the biggest weight and he loses the most, and he has the negative journey, whereas everybody else kind of walks away like okay. But it's one of those things where it's like at all the moments, everybody's willing to give their life for the cause, and you feel that, and the actors do such an incredible job, and like it makes you want to just like, even if you just painted the scenes, like you just paused the movie and just painted it. Like, I think that would be, like, awesome. That would be, like, a fun thing to do, because it's so beautiful. It's so masterfully shot. There's not, like, awkward dialogue. There's not janky editing. It is for everything to just fall into place for 3 solid movies, and to give us this like thing that, yeah, we can look back. This is our Casablanca. And that's like, this is that movie that, like, yeah, this trilogy, if I group them as a trilogy, this is probably one of my favorite movies, if not the best movie. So yeah, I gotta go Lord of the Rings. The King is back.
What is that? What is that? Is that Buffalo Bill's music we hear? Oh my god, he's got a steel chair! Oh, he just hit Return of the King, the ref's down! Son of a bitch! Return of the King had the title won! He had the title won! Son of a bitch!
No,
I had to.
I love the JR commentary.
I had it queued up on my phone. I thought it was funny. I was like, well, no, I don't get to play this song. I was like, unless. So there you go. So a little off the cuff. Good job, Lord of the Rings. Yeah, it is. Like, we talked about it. It's an amazing experience. It gets you emotional. I love Silence of the Lambs, but like in this context, I'll give it to you. So, but there you go. There's my fun game. Tyson.
Well, I think like if you want to play this game, I played it the way that one's kind of a trilogy in the finals. I gotta give it that little slight edge.
That's how it won. Yeah, all 3 movies are the greatest thing ever filmed.
But if it's just Return of the King without Fellowship and 2 Towers, I'm like, Silence of the Lambs 9 times out of 10 will probably win this one.
Cool, sweet, awesome. Well, that was fun. Nice. Yep. That was a fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Couple podcasts.
That was a good game.
Sweet, nice.
Yeah, hopefully everybody enjoyed playing along, and hit us up if you want to share who won your tournament, or if you're like, you guys left this movie off. How dare you?
I would love if someone reached out with their bracket and let's say you guys play this one instead based on the last 30 years of Best Pictures. That sounds phenomenal. So I would be definitely down. Cool. You got to have your little wax poetic moment of Lord of the Rings. Other than, I kind of stole it with my JR comment.
No, that's Silence of the Lambs is.
Oh, I let
fantastic.
you go for about 30 seconds, and I like slowly started playing the volume ever so slowly.
I don't. And then I was like, heard that. I was like, what is he playing? Is he playing like Queen? We Are the Champions? And I was like, oh no, he's playing Goodbye Horses.
All right. Well, as long as we make ourselves laugh, that's the important thing. Cool. So with that, that wraps up these movie trilogies. Good. Hopefully, Ring of Power. You guys are enjoying that at home, and these are good kind of little primer previews. I'm glad we went back and watched them, right? And I'm sure that'll help my experience in viewing of the new show, and go from there. Cool.
Absolutely. Hopefully everybody enjoyed the journey.
Yeah.
Because that's what it's about. It's about the journey, not the destination.
We're here. Next one's there. Perfect. Great. All right. We just have a lot. I was just making sure that this wasn't going into our September or our October, because I think we might be like strapped for time a little bit.
Yeah, we may have talked for a little
bit. We'll be all right.
I
don't know. We may or may not be okay. Cool. So with that, much longer podcasts than I was expecting. So cool. But other than that's it. That's all. Anything we missed? Final things you want to say? We'll be back in 2 weeks with end of Golden Sun. So exciting.
Yeah. No, I even said thanks to all the people who made this movie. Cool. So we appreciate you. Thank you, Peter Jackson, and all the actors, and yada yada yada. And I'd be here reading the credits if I
awesome.
Could.
Great. Cool. With that, I'll talk soon, and you guys, bye.
Bye.